Have you ever felt lost, starting from scratch, not knowing how you're going to pay the bills at the end of the month? Have you ever looked at your life and thought, will I ever truly prosper? If you've ever been through this or are going through it now, this story is for you. Gabriella Ward arrived in a new country with a suitcase, a dream, and almost no money. No friends, no language skills, no guarantees. All she had was courage and an immense desire to transform her reality. But it was when she discovered the power of the mind, visualization, and gratitude that everything began to change. This is a story of how the law of attraction turned the key to Gabriella's financial life, and how she went from scarcity to living a life of surprising prosperity. And perhaps, by listening to this journey, you too will discover that you can manifest yours. By the way, are you already subscribed to the channel? If not, take this opportunity to subscribe now, leave a like, and comment below where in the world you're listening to this story from. Let's embark on this transformative journey together. Gabriella Ward arrived in a new country with a suitcase full of clothes, a heart full of hope, and an almost empty pocket. She spoke little of the local language, but carried a sparkle in her eyes that not even uncertainty could extinguish. Coming from a small town, where everything was known and predictable, she found herself surrounded by tall buildings, unfamiliar faces, and a deafening silence. She had no friends nearby, no family nearby, only the courage that made her cross borders. And it was with this courage that she began to write a new story, even without knowing what the next chapter would be. In the early days, Gabriella made do as best she could. She slept in a rented room, sharing space with strangers and counting coins to buy bread. Every step was a challenge. Every choice seemed a risk. She looked for work, but without local experience. Doors closed before they even opened. Still, she didn't stop trying, even when exhaustion seemed greater than her willpower. Time passed, and reality began to weigh on her. Gabriella felt like she was chasing something she didn't even know existed. Bills piled up, the no's kept coming, and homesickness intensified. Sometimes, she wondered if she had made the right choice. But something inside her wouldn't let her give up, a soft voice that said, "You came here for a reason." Even without knowing exactly what that reason was, Gabriella continued. She observed the people in the streets, the smiles in the cafes, the cars speeding by, and imagined what it would be like to live lightly. She dreamed of stability, of freedom, of days when she wouldn't have to choose between paying rent or buying food. And it was in that space between dream and reality that something began to move. She didn't know it yet, but she was about to discover a force that would change everything. A force that didn't come from the outside world, but from within herself. And this discovery would begin with a simple question, echoing in her mind like a whisper. What if I could create the life I desire? Gabriella woke up early every day, even though she had nowhere to go. The alarm clock rang as a reminder that she needed to keep trying, even when everything seemed at a standstill. The money she brought in her suitcase had already gone towards rent, food, and transportation. She had a few coins left in her pocket and an immense desire to make it work. She looked at the ceiling and thought, will any door open today? The city streets seemed too vast for someone with so little. Gabriella walked along busy avenues, observing shop windows that seemed otherworldly. She entered cafes hoping to find a job, but left with a "we'll be back soon" and a polite smile. Each no hurt, but she tried to turn it into a learning experience. And even without knowing how, she continued to believe that something was coming. The money wasn't enough for much. Sometimes she juggled her budget, rice today, bread tomorrow, and hoping there would be some left over at the end of the week. Gabriella learned to live with little, but she dreamed of much more. Not out of greed, but for freedom. She wanted to choose, not just accept what she could afford. The bills arrived like unwelcome visitors. Electricity, water, rent. Everything seemed to rush by faster than her. Gabriella tried to stay calm, but her heart raced with each bill. She took a deep breath, closed her eyes, and told herself, "It will pass. I know it will pass." And in that space between fear and faith, she began to open herself to something new. It was in this context of scarcity that Gabriella began to hear about a certain invisible force, something that promised to transform lives, even when all seemed lost. She didn't know if she believed it, but her curiosity began to grow. And that's when, without realizing it, she took the first step towards change. Gabriella hadn't expected the silence to be so loud. The streets had a different rhythm. People spoke quickly, and she felt like she was always running late. The language seemed like a labyrinth, and each new word was a door she tried to open. Sometimes, she smiled just to disguise the fact that she didn't understand, and in this effort to fit in, she began to lose a little of herself. The days were long, and homesickness struck uninvited. Gabriella remembered family lunches, the smells of her city, the laughter that now only existed in her memory. Everything was different. The way of greeting, the way of working, even the way of looking into each other's eyes. She tried to adapt, but felt she was always one step behind, and that stirred something deep inside her. Loneliness became her constant companion. Gabriella walked the streets like someone searching for something she didn't know the name of. She wanted to feel like she belonged, but always seemed on the margins. Her heart ached when she saw groups talking, laughing, living. And there she was, trying to understand where she fit in. It was as if she were in a movie without subtitles. Even so, she didn't stop trying. She learned new words, observed gestures, imitated smiles. Each day was a lesson in emotional survival. And even when she cried in secret, she knew she was growing. Because sometimes growing hurts, but it also prepares you. It was in this whirlwind of emotions that Gabriella began to search for something greater. Something that didn't depend on language, culture, or place. Something that was inside her, waiting to be awakened. And that's when the idea of transforming her reality began to take shape. Gabriella grew up hearing that money was hard come by, that only those who already had a lot could get more. These phrases stuck to her like invisible labels, shaping her decisions without her realizing it. When she looked at her bank account, she felt a lump in her throat and thought, maybe I wasn't born for this. It was as if there was an invisible ceiling over her head, and no matter how hard she tried to jump over it, something always pulled her back down. She compared herself to others and always felt like she was behind. She saw people prospering and thought they had something she didn't: luck, connections, talent. Gabriella carried the idea that she needed to suffer a lot to deserve something, and this caused her to sabotage herself without realizing it. It was as if she were trying to run with her feet tied together. These beliefs weren't just hers. They were echoes of ancient voices, of stories told for generations. Money doesn't grow on trees. Those born poor die poor. You can't have everything in life. Gabriella repeated these phrases like mantras, unaware that she was feeding her own blockage. And the more she believed them, the further she fell from the life she dreamed of. But something began to bother her, a feeling that perhaps it was all just a poorly told story. Gabriella began to question, what if it's not true? What if I could rewrite these sentences? This doubt became a spark, and like all sparks, it could extinguish or ignite something greater. It was during this time of unease that Gabriella began searching for different answers. She wanted to understand how to change what she felt, what she thought, what she believed. And that's when, almost by chance, she stumbled upon a concept that seemed magical, but which spoke precisely that: transforming beliefs to transform life. It was on a gray afternoon that Gabriella received the news that shook everything. The temporary job she had managed to get, with so much effort, was terminated without warning. She stood there, staring at her cell phone as if time had frozen. Her heart raced, her breath became short, and a feeling of emptiness overwhelmed her. It was as if the ground had disappeared from beneath her feet. She walked home slowly, trying to understand what had happened. The streets seemed colder, the faces more distant, and the world heavier. Gabriella sat on the bed and remained silent for hours, listening to the sound of her own thoughts. And now, she wondered, not knowing where to begin. It was as if everything had collapsed at once. That night, she cried softly, as if cleansing her soul. It wasn't just about the money. It was about the feeling of being lost, without direction. For the first time, she thought about giving up, about going back home, about abandoning her dream. But something inside her resisted. A soft, almost imperceptible voice said, "It's not over yet." It was then, in the midst of despair, that Gabriella remembered a conversation she had with a roommate. A story about how thoughts shape reality, about an invisible force that responds to what we feel. At the time, she didn't pay much attention. But now, with everything falling apart, that idea seemed to make sense. And that's when she decided to try, without knowing exactly how. Gabriella began to research it further. She wanted to understand if it was possible to change her life, starting with her mind. And in this exploration, she found something that seemed magical, but which spoke simply about faith, energy, and intention. It was the beginning of a new journey, even though she didn't yet know the magnitude of the transformation that was to come. Gabriella was sitting in the common room of the shared apartment when she overheard a conversation that sounded different. One of her roommates was talking about how she had landed an amazing job after she started visualizing it every day. She mentioned something called the law of attraction, as if it were a magic key to open invisible doors. Gabriella listened attentively, trying to understand how thoughts could change reality. It kept echoing in her mind like an unforgettable song. Curious, she began to research. She found videos, texts, testimonials from people who said they had transformed their lives simply by changing what they thought and felt. It was as if the universe were a mirror, reflecting everything you emit. Gabriella found that strange, but at the same time fascinating. And the more she read, the more she felt that perhaps there was something there that she needed to discover. It was as if a door was opening inside her. She began to experiment, even without knowing exactly how. She wrote in a notebook what she would like to experience: a stable job, a comfortable home, peace in her heart. She would close her eyes and try to imagine everything in detail, as if it were already happening. At first, it seemed like a game, but little by little, she began to feel something different, a lightness, a hope. It was as if she were planting invisible seeds. Gabriella also began to pay attention to her thoughts. She realized she kept repeating negative phrases, such as "this will never work" or "I'm unlucky," and she decided to change. She started telling herself, "I am capable, the universe is with me, everything is aligning." These words became mantras, and she repeated them with faith, even when reality showed no signs of change. It was during this process that Gabriella felt something was moving, not outside of her, but within, a silent force, like a breeze gently pushing in the right direction. And even without concrete proof, she began to believe, because sometimes believing is the first step to seeing. Gabriella decided to start small. She took an old notebook, one of those with a worn cover, and wrote in large letters, "My new reality." There, she began to describe how she wanted to live, with details, colors, smells, sensations. She imagined waking up in a bright house, calmly drinking coffee, working with purpose. It was like painting a picture with words. She also began practicing affirmations. She repeated phrases like, "I am prosperous. Money comes to me easily. Everything is aligning in my favor." At first, it seemed strange, almost forced, but over time, these words began to take on a life of their own. Gabriella spoke with more firmness, like someone who plants and already smells a flower. Visualization became a ritual. Every day, before going to sleep, she would close her eyes and see herself living the life she desired. She felt the touch of the new sheets, the taste of the coffee, the sound of laughter in a work meeting. It was all so vivid that, for a few minutes, she forgot about the difficult reality. And in those moments, something inside her changed. She also began to pay attention to the little things. An unexpected compliment, a message of support, an opportunity that seemed timid. Gabriella started to see signs where, before, she only saw obstacles. It was as if the universe was gradually responding to what she was emitting, and that motivated her to continue. Even without major external changes, Gabriella felt that something was different. It was as if life was reorganizing itself behind the scenes, and she, now more connected with herself, was beginning to realize that perhaps the secret wasn't waiting for everything to change, but changing from within first. Despite all the initial excitement, Gabriella began to feel doubt. She wondered if it was all real or just another beautiful illusion. Sometimes, she repeated the affirmations in a low voice, as if she didn't fully believe what she was saying. The fear of disappointment was great, and her mind insisted on bringing up memories of past failures. It was as if one part of her wanted to move forward, but another pulled her back. She tried to maintain her visualization routine, but she couldn't always manage it. There were days when she woke up tired, with no desire to imagine anything. Reality hit hard, and the bills didn't wait for miracles. Gabriella felt torn between what she saw outside and what she tried to create inside, and this silent battle was beginning to wear her down. At times, she thought about stopping. Maybe this won't work for me, she would say, looking at the notebook where she wrote down her dreams. But something prevented her from giving up completely. It was as if, even in doubt, there was a spark that wouldn't go out. And that spark, small but stubborn, continued to burn. Gabriella began to realize that the resistance didn't come from the world. It came from within herself. They were internal voices, old fears, beliefs that hadn't yet been healed. And understanding this was an important step, because when we recognize what's holding us back, we begin to find the path to unlock it. It was at that moment that she decided to go deeper. It wasn't enough to repeat phrases or imagine beautiful scenes. She needed to feel, believe, live as if it were already real. And this decision opened up space for something new, a practice that would change everything: gratitude. Gabriella began to realize that even on difficult days, good things were happening. A smile from a stranger, a sunset scene from the window, a kind message from someone far away. She decided that every day she would write down 3 things she was grateful for. At first, it seemed like little. But over time, these small lights began to illuminate the dark corners of her mind. Gratitude became a habit. Before going to sleep, she would close her eyes and relive the good moments of the day, no matter how small. She felt the warmth of the blanket, the taste of the tea, the comfort of being safe. And by giving thanks, something changed. It was as if the universe smiled back, recognizing her vibration. Gabriella began to feel that she was in tune with something greater. She also began to give thanks for things she didn't yet have. Thank you for my dream job. Thank you for the beautiful house that's coming. Thank you for the abundance that surrounds me. These phrases, spoken with faith, create a feeling of already having achieved them. And this feeling, so real, began to shape her energy. It was as if she were living the future in the present. Gratitude also helped her in moments of doubt. When something didn't go as expected, she would take a deep breath and look for something she could be grateful for. Sometimes it was just the fact of being alive, of having learned something, of having another day to try. And that strengthened her, because when we change our focus, we change our frequency. And when we change our frequency, we change everything. It was in this state of constant gratitude that Gabriella began to feel ready to receive, to trust, to manifest. And with a light heart, she took the next step to change the way she thought about herself and the world. Over time, Gabriella began to realize that something inside her was changing. Phrases that had once seemed strange now made sense. She no longer saw herself as a victim of circumstances, but as the creator of her own reality. It was as if she had changed her glasses, and now she saw possibilities where before she only saw limits. This new vision began to transform her days. She began to observe herself with more affection. When a negative thought arose, she didn't ignore it. She questioned it. Is this true or just an old fear? Little by little, Gabriella cleared her mind like someone organizing a drawer full of things that no longer serve a purpose. And in this process, she discovered that there was room for new, lighter, more powerful ideas. Confidence began to grow. Gabriella no longer shrank from challenges. She faced them with curiosity. She began to feel deserving, capable, ready. It was as if she had rediscovered a version of herself that had always existed, but was hidden. And this version had a sparkle in her eyes and firm steps. She also began to speak differently. Her words carried more intention, more presence. I can, I will, I deserve it became part of her daily vocabulary. And this wasn't just talk, it was energy. Gabriella was vibrating at a different frequency, and the world was beginning to respond. This internal change brought a new disposition. She wanted to act, to move, to create. And with this new mindset, Gabriella began to make different decisions. Because when the mind changes, everything changes. And it was with this new perspective that she began to track the first concrete results. Gabriella began to notice that different things were happening. One day, she received an unexpected call offering her a part-time job. It wasn't exactly what she had dreamed of, but it came at the right time, like a silent answer from the universe. She smiled, remembering the visualizations she did every night. It was as if life was beginning to whisper, "Keep going, you're on the right track." Other small blessings began to appear. An unexpected discount at the market, a ride offered by someone she barely knew, a conversation that brought clarity. Gabriella began to see these moments as signs. They weren't coincidences, they were confirmations, and this motivated her to maintain the practice, even on days when her faith seemed weakest. She also began receiving praise at work. People noticed her dedication, her energy, her presence. Gabriella felt she was being seen, recognized, and this fueled her self-esteem, which had previously been hidden behind difficulties. It was as if the universe was saying, "You deserve more and it's coming." These manifestations, though small, had profound impact. Gabriella began to trust the process more, to open herself to possibilities. She no longer doubted so much. Now, she observed with curiosity. Each day brought a surprise, and she learned to be grateful even before understanding why. It was as if she were dancing with life, in harmony, and it was in this rhythm of discovery that Gabriella began to feel that something bigger was approaching, like a wave that grows slowly, but carries strength. She didn't know what it was, but she felt it, and this feeling led her to further strengthen her connection with the universe. With each small victory, Gabriella felt her faith grow stronger. It was no longer just a beautiful idea, it was a living experience. She began waking up with more energy, as if she knew something good was coming. She created a routine of connecting with the universe. She would wake up, take a deep breath, give thanks, and visualize. It was her sacred moment before the world began to turn. She also began to meditate. In the silence, she found answers that didn't come from books, but from her heart. She felt a peace that didn't depend on circumstances, and that made her stronger. Gabriella learned to trust in the invisible, in the timing of things, in the flow of life, and that trust became fuel to keep moving forward, even without guarantees. Each day, she became more aware of her energy. She avoided negative conversations, distanced herself from heavy environments, and carefully chose what she read, watched, and listened to. Gabriella understood that everything influenced her vibration, and she wanted to vibrate high, like someone who calls prosperity with a smile on her face. She also began to share what she was learning. She talked to friends, recommended books, and sent videos. Gabriella wanted other people to feel what she was feeling, because when you discover something transformative, it's impossible to keep it to yourself. And in this act of teaching, she learned even more. It was in this state of renewed faith that Gabriella decided to take a bold step. She wanted to visualize her ideal life with even greater clarity, like someone drawing a map for the universe to follow. And that's when she immersed herself in the practice of detailed visualization. Gabriella decided that generic imagination wasn't enough. She wanted to feel every detail of the life she desired. She would close her eyes and see herself entering a brightly lit apartment, with plants in the windows and the smell of fresh coffee in the air. She felt the feel of the furniture, heard the sound of water running in the sink, saw the reflection of the sun on the light-colored walls. It was as if she were living it, even without having it yet. And this feeling made her smile, like someone who already knows she's going to get there. She visualized her ideal job with precision. She imagined the environment, her colleagues, the type of task she would perform, even the praise she would receive at the end of the day. Gabriella saw herself confident, productive, fulfilled. She felt the weight of her bag on her shoulders, the sound of footsteps in the hallway, the warmth of the mug in her hands. Everything was so vivid that, for a few minutes, she forgot about the current reality. And in those moments, something inside her aligned. With each visualization, she added new details. The amount she wanted to earn, the type of clothes she would wear, the place where she would have lunch. Gabriella left no room for doubt. She created with clarity, with intention, with emotion. And the clearer the image, the stronger connection. It was as if she were drawing a map for the universe to follow. She also began using music to intensify the experience. She would choose soft tracks, close her eyes, and let her mind wander. Sometimes she would cry with emotion, feeling everything so real. It was as if she were accessing a version of herself that already lived this reality. And this deep connection made her believe even more. It was in this state of conscious creation that Gabriella began to act differently. Because when you feel you already have it, you start to behave as if you already live it. And it was with this energy that she began to take actions aligned with her dreams. With a clearer mind and a more confident heart, Gabriella began to act differently. She no longer set resumes with fear. Now, she sent them with enthusiasm, like someone who knows she's being seen. She adjusted her professional profile, updated her networks, and began studying new skills. Each step was taken with intention, with focus, with faith. It was as if the universe had been waiting for this move. She also began to dress as someone who had already achieved what she wanted. She chose clothes more carefully, walked with a firm posture, and looked people in the eye. Gabriella understood that the energy she emitted was part of the message the world received. And by changing her attitude, she began to attract different looks, new opportunities, and unexpected invitations. It was as if she were vibrating at a different frequency. Decisions also changed. Gabriella began saying no to what didn't make sense, and yes to what brought her closer to her dreams. She no longer accepted just anything. Now, she chose consciously, and this firm yet light stance began to open doors. Because when you take a stand, the universe responds clearly. She also began investing in herself. She bought an online course, read books about prosperity, and participated in free events. Gabriella understood that each action was a seed, and even if the fruits weren't yet visible, she knew they were growing. It was like tending to an invisible garden with love and patience. It was within this rhythm of coordinated action that Gabriella began to feel a deeper change. It wasn't just about money, it was about identity. She was becoming the person she had always dreamed of being. And with this new version came an unexpected emotion, a twist that would change everything. Gabriella was doing well, but like every journey, there came a day when everything seemed to crumble. A job offer that seemed certain was canceled at the last minute. She felt the ground shake, as if the universe had taken a step back. Doubt returned with force, and the old question echoed. Does this really work? Her heart tightened, and her faith wavered. She spent hours in silence, staring at the ceiling, trying to understand what was happening. Tears came without warning, like rain on a clear day. Gabriella felt tired, like someone who had swum against the current for too long. It was one of those moments when everything seems dark, even with the light on. And in that silence, she heard something different. It was a memory, a clip from a video that said, "The universe tests your faith before delivering what you asked for." That hit her hard. Gabriella took a deep breath, wiped her face, and slowly stood up. She didn't know if it was true, but she decided to believe. Because sometimes believing is all you have. She went back to her notebook, reread her visualizations, her affirmations, her thanks. She felt each word as if it were new. And there, in the midst of the pain, she rekindled the flame. Gabriella understood that the upheaval wasn't the end. It was part of the journey. It was as if the universe was asking, "Do you still want this?" With a firmer heart, she silently replied, "Yes, I want to." And it was with this answer that Gabriella opened herself to the unexpected. Because when we choose to continue, even without guarantees, the universe begins to conspire in surprising ways. It was on an ordinary morning that everything changed. Gabriella received an email with the subject, International Job Opportunity. She could hardly believe it. It was a company she had admired for years, offering a position that perfectly matched her vision. Her heart raced and her eyes filled with tears. It was as if the universe had answered with surgical precision. She reread the email several times, trying to understand if it was real. The offer included a higher-than-expected salary, incredible benefits, and the possibility of growth. Gabriella remembered the night she visualized it, in detail, with emotion. And now, it was all there before her. It was as if the dream had stepped off the page and become reality. The interview was scheduled for the following week. Gabriella prepared confidently, as if she already knew that this place was hers. She dressed carefully, spoke clearly, and smiled genuinely. And as she left the room, she felt a profound peace. It wasn't anxiety, it was certainty. Days later, the confirmation came. She was hired. The news spread among her friends, and everyone wanted to know how she did it. Gabriella smiled and said, "I manifested it." Some laughed. Others were interested, but she knew it wasn't luck. It was alignment. It was faith. It was practice. And this achievement was just the beginning of a new phase. With the contract signed and her heart full of gratitude, Gabriella looked back and saw how far she had come. From an empty suitcase to her dream job, everything had been built with intention. And now, she was ready to live what had previously only existed in her imagination. With her new job, Gabriella could finally breathe. She rented her own apartment with large windows and natural light streaming in every morning. She decorated every corner with care, choosing colors that conveyed peace and prosperity. The refrigerator was full, the closet organized, the silence comfortable. Everything seemed like a dream come true, and every detail was living proof that the change had happened. She began to live more lightly. She no longer needed to count pennies, nor choose between paying a bill or buying something she liked. Gabriella could plan trips, take courses, invest in herself. Money ceased to be a burden and became a tool. And with this freedom, she began to dream even bigger. Her routine had also changed. Gabriella used to wake up early, but now with enthusiasm. She went to work with joy, feeling valued and connected to what she did. On weekends, she explored the city, met new people, and created memories. It was as if life had gained color, sound, and movement. And all of this came from within, from the energy she had cultivated. She also began helping others. She shared her story, gave advice, and encouraged those who were starting out. Gabriella knew that her journey could inspire, and that made her feel even more fulfilled. Because prosperity, she discovered, isn't just about having, it's about overflowing with it. It was in this new rhythm that Gabriella began to understand the true impact of the law of attraction. It wasn't just about money, work, or achievements. It was about transformation. And this profound understanding led her to reflect on everything she had experienced up to that point. Gabriella, now in a new chapter of her life, began to mentally revisit everything she had lived through. Every step, every fall, every doubt, everything made sense now. She looked back fondly, like someone observing a winding road that led exactly to the right destination. Pain turned into learning, fear into strength, and dreams into reality. It was as if each piece had fallen into place at the perfect time. She thought about the nights she cried silently, the times she almost gave up, and the small victories that kept her strong. Gabriella understood that the journey wasn't about luck, but about choice. Choosing to believe, even without guarantees. Choosing to continue, even without signs. Choosing to feel, even when everything seemed empty. And those choices changed everything. The law of attraction, which once seemed like a distant idea, was now a part of her, not as a magic formula, but as a way of life. Gabriella learned that the universe responds to vibration, intention, and emotion, and that when you align yourself with what you desire, the world begins to reorganize itself to deliver it to you. It was a dance between wanting and trusting. She also realized that prosperity wasn't just about money. It was about peace, freedom, fulfillment. Gabriella felt rich in experiences, in learning and connections. And this wealth, invisible to the eyes, was the most valuable, because when the soul prospers, everything around it flourishes. It was with this deeper perspective that Gabriella began to live more mindfully. Each day was a gift, each challenge opportunity, each dream a seed. And in this new fertile ground, she knew there was still much to come. Because the journey of manifestation has no end, it only transforms. Gabriella looked at her current life and could hardly believe what she saw. Everything that had once seemed distant was now part of her daily life. Her home, her work, her peace, everything was born first within her, in her thoughts, her emotions, her visualizations. The law of attraction wasn't a sudden miracle, but a daily construction. And this silent practice became the foundation of everything. She realized it wasn't just about achieving things, but about transforming herself. Gabriella became more aware, more present, more connected to what truly matters. She learned to listen to her intuition, to respect her limits, to trust in the timing of things. And this new version of herself was lighter, stronger, more authentic. It was as if she had returned home to herself. The law of attraction also changed her relationship with the world. Gabriella began to see beauty in the details, opportunities and difficulties, signs and coincidences. She felt part of something bigger, as if she were in constant dialogue with the universe. And this connection made her walk with more confidence, even without knowing exactly what was to come. She also understood that the practice doesn't end when something is achieved. It's a lifestyle, a way of thinking, feeling, and acting. Gabriella continued visualizing, giving thanks, and aligning her desires with her actions, because now she knew the universe is always listening. And everything begins with what you choose to vibrate. It was with this awareness that Gabriella began to live with more purpose. Each day was a chance to create, to manifest, to expand. And in this new rhythm, she knew there was still much to come. Because when you understand the impact of your energy, the whole world transforms. Today, Gabriella walks the streets with ease, not because everything is perfect, but because she has learned to trust. Each step is guided by a silent certainty. Life responds to what you emanate. She no longer waits for the world to change to feel good. She changes from within, and the world follows. And this awareness has become her greatest treasure. She knows there are still challenges, but now she sees them as stepping stones. Gabriella has learned that prosperity is not a destination. It's a state of being. It's waking up with gratitude, acting with intention, dreaming with courage. And when you live like that, everything around you begins to flourish. Because the universe cannot resist those who vibrate with truth. Her story is a reminder that everyone has that power. It doesn't matter where you start. What matters is how you choose to walk. Gabriella started from scratch in a foreign country with fear and uncertainty. But she chose to believe, even when everything said otherwise. And that choice changed everything. She leaves a message for those listening. You deserve it. You already have everything within you. The law of attraction isn't magic. It's movement, it's intention, it's faith. And when you begin to live with this awareness, life transforms in ways you can't even imagine. And so, Gabriella continues her journey, now with a sparkle in her eyes and peace in her heart. Because when you understand that you are a co-author of your own story, each page becomes an opportunity. And perhaps, hearing this, you too will feel ready to begin writing yours. And so, Gabriella Ward transformed not only her financial life, but also her way of existing in the world. She learned that true prosperity begins within in what we think, what we feel, what we believe is possible. The law of attraction wasn't a miracle that fell from the sky, but a daily choice to align mind, heart, and action. Today, she lives with purpose, abundance, and peace. But the most beautiful thing is that she knows this journey has no end, because there's always more to learn, more to grow, more to manifest. And perhaps, upon hearing this story, you felt something awaken within you, a desire to try, to believe, to begin. If this resonated with you in any way, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and leave your comment below. Tell us, what do you want to manifest in your life? Your story can begin now. And who knows, one day you might be the protagonist of an episode like this.